What it is, it's your boy Doug, and I'm up and at it, and I do believe that it is December. Make sure. 2024. We are 11 days away from Christmas. I just saw Santa Claus. I talked to about you guys. Make sure you guys stay nice, not naughty. He does exist. I saw him the other night. I'm headed to Bremen, Georgia, to look at a dryer, and then I'm gonna head to McDonough, Georgia, to look at a washer and a dryer. Things are looking pretty busy for me these days in the Atlanta area. If you need the best prices in appliance repair, give me a call, 762-444-2168. Everybody's starting to catch on to me. They're watching my YouTube videos and I'm getting calls. So thank you for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell to all to get all my content. And I appreciate your help. We're working this from ground roots up. Ignore your drive. We got a refrigerator in Jonesboro. It cut off and won't come up. Not cooling. That's in Jonesboro. If it's still there when I get done, I might. But right now, I'm going to Bremen, Georgia. Shout out to Bremen. And then McDonough, Georgia. Shout out to my people in McDonough. We gotta do something. We gotta move this. It's got to go. There you go. No space on this page. No space on this page. There we go. I still use Gas Buddy, guys, to suggest you want to save money. Gas just went back up because, you know, your boy Joe Biden is trying to rob us for every little dime we got before he get put out in 38 more days. So he's robbing us of every little dime he can get. He's selling the wall. He's doing every little thing possible. There's Amoco. We got a brand new Amoco. Gas is up there, baby. Guess we do racetrack. And what this does, this racetrack, is gonna get when I put this fuel Gas Buddy card in, it knocks the price down. It knocks the price down. Once it knocks the price down, the difference I save is automatically deposited into my checking. Well, I got it going into my savings account. That's how I do it. So I make a little money for using the card. So when I stick the card in the machine, it goes from $2.99 to $2.76. And the gallons that I use, the difference is that every gallon I use, the difference is put into my savings account. Just like a piggy bank. All right, guys. We're all set. Let's roll. With these high prices, what I do is I top off my tank, so I don't have to spend as much. If I just top it off, I don't spend as much. And then we're gonna head out. Oh, I gotta stop at the bank too. I know you guys are wondering about those drones flying over our country, unauthorized. The president putting our lives at risk. Talking about they see no evidence. Why are you gonna wait for evidence? Why are you gonna wait for it to do something? They want to wait to see what it do before they react, almost as if they know what it is. But if you're going to protect the American people, you should take one down and identify it and let us know what the hell's going on. Don't just tell us you don't know what it is, but it serves no threat because it hasn't done anything. It shouldn't be flying over our airspace in the first place. When you fly over our airspace, we're in risk. You're waiting on it to do something. You're waiting on it to cause us some harm. It could be carrying COVID-20, COVID-21, whatever COVID. It could be anything. But for you to allow it to come into our airspace, you're putting us in harm's way. And I don't know why we, the American people, can't hold Joe Biden liable for putting our lives at risk. And then he sent $50 billion to Ukraine for them to defend themselves, and then another $500 million to Ukraine a day later for them to defend themselves. But yet he won't defend us with these drones. And I hear they the size of a car or SUV. That's big enough to carry a bomb in these day and age. The fact that they just lie. It's been a fake administration since day one. It's sad. I mean, Trump can't get in office soon enough, man. It's like a nightmare. And I guarantee you this Joe Biden is somewhere in the basement with his ice cream and donuts, coffee, whatever else, and taking naps. He don't give a shit. Knows his son don't go to jail. I'm gonna tell you guys, there's gonna be some things changing when Trump get in office. Trust and believe that. It's gonna be a whole different thing happening. They already getting scared because they know he get ready to clean house. And there's gonna be a lot of mofo going to the big house. Saturday morning, and everybody gonna be Christmas shopping today, I imagine. Oh, gotta get my bank card out. Also, guys, change your bank card every other year or so to keep from people hacking your identity online. So, you know, like me, I get me a new card every other couple of years. Yep, every couple of years. Get you a new card. Never keep it the same. Can't be right. Sign up. Okay, now we go gas and top off. That can't be right. Unless it could be. So, top off. It is 44 degrees out there. Definitely winter time. Oh shit, I thought the car was moving. The car next door was moving in the window. It looked like I didn't have my car in gear. Tripping. I'm looking at the window and it looked like I was going forward, but he was pulling off. I knew I had my shit in park. But shizzle my nizzle dizzle bizzo. Now, let's see. 13. $18, $20, $22. I'm gonna go with 25. Then I go out here and do what I gotta do for the day. Saves money when you top it off. Then wait until your tank go definitely on E. When you go on E like that, then you got to get $50, $60, $70 for gas. Not me. Okay. Schedule. Her name is Donna, Oak Street, Bremen, Georgia. Yes. I forgot to get a receipt.
Make America great again. What does that mean?
What are we going to do to prepare for the next 4 years?
What did Obama do? He got on stage, cried, and said if he had a son, he'd look like Trayvon, and we got not one piece of legislation.
Trump's rhetoric is very dangerous for black people.
You can agree to disagree.
I want to encourage all of my Republicans and my Democrats moving forward, educate people on policy, beliefs, and where you want us to go in the next 8 years.
As a black woman, how can you support Donald Trump? Hey, wait. I know you want to watch this next video, but listen, if you are an entrepreneur, business coach, they have a really important and serious conversation that we're going to talk about. So in the wake of the 2024 presidential election, Donald Trump's re-election has sparked intense reaction across the nation, while many black women express deep concern about what this means for their rights.
It means we're gonna ship them out, put y'all on the boat, send y'all back to Africa.
See his leadership as beneficial for their values and priorities. Today, we're bringing together voices from both sides to have an honest conversation. Our goal is not to debate who is right or wrong, but to explore the perspectives, values, and experiences that shape these different viewpoints. Black women have always been at the forefront of societal change, and their voices are critical to understanding the challenges and possibilities of this moment. Let's listen, let's learn, let's engage in dialogue and seek understanding over our division. I got my brother JP, Josh Powell in the building. Also, I have perspectives. He has perspectives. We have the Michaela Montgomery in the building. How's there? You all right? We got Tamika Hampton in the building as well. And so this is going to be an interesting conversation, a much needed conversation. I wanted to have this conversation because, number one, in the wake of a new Donald Trump presidency, the next day felt crazy, right? Felt crazy to the point of people were like crying, people were like distraught over it. And then you got Michaela, don't play. But then you got, people.
Well, I was the lady.
Right. So let's just start there, right? Let's just start there. Tell the people who you are and what are your views on everything that's been happening.
Well, I am Michaela Montgomery. I was a coalitions coordinator for the Donald J. Trump campaign. Before that, though, I was just a political consultant. So I've helped a lot of your Atlanta faves get elected, Democrat and Republican. So I was already pretty well known in this space, but me and Trump kind of piped me up.
Yeah. Tamika, talk to us a little bit.
I guess I would say I was one of those after the election didn't expect the result that was given. So I'm heavy into the community and also just with my everyday life and family life. It's about what it looks like going forward. So it was heavy. And I just was silent all day just to take it in as to how to push forward. But
and so I'll start there with you though. So do you what does a Donald Trump presidency mean to you?
For me, it means now that I have to hone in more on my family.
Yeah.
And I'm a single black mom, so I have a son who I feel as though I have to put more presence around him and what that looks like for him going forward.
Yeah.
With all the different policies that are in place or coming about, I would say that it frightens me. So it just, makes me feel as if it's not just him, but I also have a mother that, does get Social Security, does have Obamacare, all of those things. So it really changes the perspective of what life looks like going forward for the next 4 years.
As a black woman, how can you support Donald Trump?
Well, I too am a mother. And so I have a 4-year-old daughter. And so for me, it came to the things that were being taught in school at children her age. My daughter is 4. I don't think there's any reason why a book about masturbation should be available on the bookshelf in her classroom. My daughter is 4. There's no reason that along with learning the ABCs, you're learning the ABCs of gender. You're either a boy or you're a girl. Because now her and I are going out spaces and she's seeing, people who... a man with eyelashes and the fingernails and makeup, but a full beard, and she's like, Mommy, is that a girl or a boy? And it's like, okay, well, clearly, they look like a girl, so we're just gonna assume that this is a girl, And so I think that instead of that being pushed so hard in schools with drag queen story hour and all of these other things that they were gonna allow on the left, I think that it's on parents to teach your kids to just be tolerant. Because while gay people or people who live that lifestyle might do something out of the ordinary, like men dressing as women and women dressing as men, you'll also see other people who aren't in the LGBTQIA lifestyle who are a bit out of the ordinary. You see burn victims. You see people who are suffering from paralysis. So it's like, you don't want your kid to point and stare at anybody just because they're different. So I think that that's what we should focus on, rather than telling a kid that, like my little girl might be like, I love my best friend. I don't want her teacher to be like, oh, well, you're gay. I don't want my daughter to be like, Mommy, I want to play with trucks today. And she go to school and say the same thing, and the teacher tell her, oh, well, you can grow up and be a boy. Like, these are all things that I don't think should be allowed in school, and I wholeheartedly went full force to make sure that it wouldn't stay in schools.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question with that, because with stating that, what about the African American classes being banned from high schools? I think
that's a CRT thing, and while I understand CRT is critical race theory, which was something that was thought up in law school, which is the theory that when you teach black children nothing but oppression and suffering, then that's the mindset that they grow up with. So it's like, if you teach them, okay, slaves, then all they're going to think of is, okay, well, I came from this, I don't really have much further to go. And then with teaching about slavery, because a lot of people will bring up the Holocaust and how, like, okay, well, we still talk about the Holocaust. The difference in the Holocaust and like the CRT thing about slavery is, with the Holocaust, you're taught to hate one person, and that's Hitler. One person did a bad thing, and that's it. With slavery, you're taught that all white people are bad. So now growing up, black kids don't trust white people. They don't want to work with white people. They have, complicated relationships with white people. So CRT, they're asking that they teach things differently. Do I agree with it? I would have to read more and see it put in place. But what I can tell you is my personal experience. I grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada. So Black history was already unbeknownst and not really taught in any of my classrooms. Yes, I knew about Martin Luther King, but when I say that was legitimately it, I never learned about a Frederick Douglass. I never learned about a Harriet Tubman. I never learned about a Malcolm X. I never learned about a Fred Hampton. All of that was knowledge that was given to me by my parents. I have two parents that were raised in the 60s in the deep south in Louisiana. So they would tell me their stories of being like hosed down. My dad would tell me stories of integration and how they used to change the mouthpiece on the music recorders because they didn't want the black kids and the white kids' mouths to touch the same things. Like, I heard these stories from my parents. My parents made us watch movies like Rosewood, like Malcolm X, like Roots, so we could learn about the injustices that we face, because I was never going to learn it in schools. So to me, I feel like for any black parent who legitimately cares about making sure that their child knows where they come from, that parent is going to already teach it themselves in their household, because no matter what, CRT or not, we were never going to get that knowledge in schools. That's always been our thing. And so now there's just more pressure on us, I guess, to make sure our kids know. And then another thing too is, even when they teach your kids black history in schools, they teach them that black history started with slavery. Our history was stolen from us with slavery. And so it's like, now we have the opportunity to really teach our kids black history, because when I was learning about ancient Egypt, the pictures were white people. When I learned about Cleopatra and Ramses and all of that, the book had pictures of white people. So it's always been on us to teach our kids Black history. So for me, it's not a big talking point or something to be worried about, because it's not really going to change the status quo that we face right now.
Yeah. What's your thoughts, JP?
I'm bubbling over here.
Yeah.
It's so many things. For one, can you touch on, I want to go a separate route with education, but still staying on the same topic. Can you touch on the narrative about current versus what's to come? Because I feel like more people are so concerned about, whether it was Donald Trump or, Kamala, clearly it's Donald Trump, but it's like we don't talk about now.
Mm-hmm.
We literally have just forget about the fact that these kids, to your point, are being introduced to things that many parents don't like or appreciate. The lack of education, the lack of literacy rate nationwide, which is an issue. We don't talk about a lot of the things, whether it's the teachers' pay, whether it's so many things that are literally going on right now. Why has that not been spoken to as much as the focus on what's being said for what's to come?
If mainstream media focused on right now the status quo, where the parents are being forced to introduce their kids to subjects that they're not comfortable with, if we're talking about, boys playing in little girl sports, we're talking about, of course, the illiteracy rate, the low rate of pay for teachers, yet the principal makes six figures, even though the school has been failing for years. These are all things where if we talk about them like we should be talking about them, nobody would be voting for the Democrats. Nobody. Because these are all policies that they push. They're the ones who have full faith in the Department of Education, which now accounts for 92% of our kids unable to read. They're the ones responsible for, deciding the curriculum that is taught in all of these schools. And so they're the reason why our kids believe that there's 53 genders. So it's like, if we were to tell them that the DOE is the reason for this, then people wouldn't be so opposed to abolishing the DOE and figuring out a new way to go about things. If we did not focus on the fact that you pay taxes to ensure that your child, the school that your child is going to, is performing adequately, right? And then if you feel like your tax dollars aren't going to good use, you should be able to take those tax dollars somewhere else and send your child somewhere else where they will allocate that money properly and they will educate your child properly. However, that's school choice, and God forbid we get the entire nation on board with school choice. At the end of the day, if we really focused on the status quo, nobody would be a Democrat. If we looked at just the status quo at the time of the election, a lot of people, to your point, were surprised that the election turned out the way it did. Probably because there was so much sensationalism around our candidate, but there was no sense around putting her in office. Because the status quo was people can't afford to feed their families anymore. The status quo was people can't afford to pay their mortgage anymore. The status quo is that these kids cannot read. And for that reason, you saw these surprising numbers of people go out and vote for a conservative candidate, because the policies make sense. Once you separate the policy from the person, we'll see a lot different trends as far as voting and who holds office.
So one more thing and then I'll move on. So I'm gonna share something personal. I know they're with one of my kids, I'm not gonna say which one, but I'll even go back 2 years ago, right? There was some issues going on, and clearly the work wasn't being done right, and whatever. At the end of the day, there was a deadline given. My child didn't perform their duty to enter in their stuff on time, and there's a whole bunch of problems, right? But it was like, oh no, it's okay, and still push that through. Now my child is very intelligent. Let me start with that. But for me, what's important is foundation, because what kind of precedent are you setting?
Exactly.
When you've continuously gave this child time after time after time to do what they're supposed to do, again, there are things that are going on where the requirement is not being met, and my child is somewhat suffering because you're kind of get rewarded for the bad behavior.
Well, I'm the Republican that can take accountability. That's our fault. No child left behind. Some of these kids need to be getting left behind. That was 1,000% our fault. Yep. And it's on us to rectify the wrong that has been done. I think the unfortunate factor of it is, as you guys can see, loyalty matters a lot. in the party system. And I don't think anybody wants to come out right and say Bush messed it up for us, you know. But we see the solvency now being proposed as getting rid of the DOE, because it's the DOE who enforces this No Child Left Behind thing. If there is no DOE, now we can leave children behind like they need to, because much like you said, even though your child is smart and you know that she can keep up, there are children who can't.
She or he.
She or he. I'm sorry, I only know about daughters. I don't. You have sons too? You do. My bad. But yes, I'm thinking the son is a baby. So, but anyway, it's like you're only as strong as your weakest link. So if you see them passing your daughter along and you know that your daughter has the information, imagine what they're doing to kids who don't have the information. And now you unfortunately have teachers who have to go over things that should have been solidified in the previous grade or the grade before that, but they have to start all the way back here so that the weakest link in the class can keep up. And that, of course, does a disservice to all of the other students in the class, because while they should be moving forward, they're just reiterating the same stuff for the next 2 years because somebody in the class cannot keep up with the current grade level.
Right. I wanted to give that example, but moving forward to my question. So basically, I wanted to get you to talk about the 10%, because I know there's been a lot of pushback on Trump's proposal as to what he wants to see moving forward in regards to the educational system.
Well, yes. So when I talk about the 10%, a lot of people hear that we're abolishing the DOE and they're like, oh my God, like none of the schools will have any money. This is going to be horrible. But like I already mentioned, the DOE is in charge of the curriculum. So now that we're giving the power back to the states, parents can show up to board meetings, parents can show up to PTA meetings, parents can have meetings with principals and petition other parents to change said curriculum. So if you don't want your child learning 53 genders, you now have the right and the ability to ensure that it's not taught in that school at all. Whereas currently, right now with our current administration, you cannot do that. And then the money part is only 10% of funding for grades K through 12 comes from the DOE. That 10% would not be hard to recover from other sources. Just looking at here in Georgia, we have a lottery. We can recover an extra 10% from the lottery. We also have our Georgia Hope Scholarship, which we probably would expand to help other students, you know, going to college. And then lastly, when it comes to school choice, you know, now we would have federally funded school vouchers so that you can send your kid to whatever school you want to. And school choice shouldn't even be a debatable thing in the Black community, because we've been utilizing school choice since it's been illegal. We all know somebody who got locked up for using their auntie, cousin, best friend address to send their kid to a better school. Before, it wasn't even about education. A lot of times it was about safety. Now it's not only legal, but it's actually encouraged. And now you're going to be given a check to take to whatever school you want to send your kid to, and to ensure that your child is receiving the quality education that they deserve.
But speaking on safety, though, one of the things that I've heard a lot, right? So I'm a parent, you know, of a 16-year-old daughter. My son is 9 years old. We're all parents on here. Trump's rhetoric is very dangerous for Black people.
What rhetoric have you heard Trump say that made you feel like he was divisive and or dangerous?
So I wouldn't say it was directly to me, but me as being in the whole of him talking over Mike to the American people of exactly some of the things they're going to do. Send people back to their countries with their families. Take out things that is such as special needs out of the schools. Taking away all the things. So for me, it's like he want to get rid of that, make America great again. What does that mean?
America have the penalty to drug dealers. I mean,
all those drug dealers, meaning cartel level drug dealers. You know, somebody selling nickel bags on the street is not going to get the death penalty.
Well, he would don't know, because the way that this
we do
society,
and the law actually hasn't been written yet also for us,
but it's on their way. So looking forward,
define what the drug dealer is that will entail them to be deserving of the death penalty, then maybe we can bring this argument back up. But so to assume that somebody selling a dime bag on the corner is going to get the death penalty, I think is a bit outrageous.
Well, you know, I feel like so know that they say about the police being able to have immunity in reference to our case. So, and now you guys talk to an officer about Obama. What I'm hearing is if my son is in a car, and let's say a cop come up, and his tail light may not be out, but he might do something to make it out, or he may find some type of small infraction just to stop him, when initially there was no reason for the stop. So for me, as a Black mother, a single mother of a 19-year-old child, that's disturbing to know that at any moment my son is stopped.
And his 19-year-old child is not going to be looked at as a child. He's going to look as an age ranger.
So then let me jump in before she goes. because I do think that, and everybody has a right for their passion, don't get me wrong. But I think it's unfair to point the finger when the last 4 years, for sure, maybe even 5. We can even say 5. But last I checked, recently for me, I was out here rioting in Atlanta because of George Floyd. I was rioting in Atlanta because of all the other people who have lost their life behind police brutality and everything else going on. That is not a presidential thing when we're talking about one of the biggest gangs in the world in regards to policing. There's a lot of things that need to change in regards to policing.
But that's the thing, though, bro. Like, if he's saying that he wants complete police immunity, that means they're not gonna. Does that mean it?
Because if you guys looked at what he said after, when he talked at the NHBJ conference, where he talked about, yes, they will have immunity, but there will also be a board that they have to answer to determine whether or not they were actually doing their job. So if your son gets pulled over for a simple traffic stop and for whatever reason deadly force is used, then there's going to be a heavy analysis as to why in the world was deadly force ever used, and then there's still an opportunity for that officer to be held responsible for his actions. And much like what Josh just said, police pretty much in these situations have already been immune. So we're acting like the status quo, like you asked earlier, does not exist. We're acting like anything is going to change by Trump saying, hey, if you're in these situations, you can do this, even though usually you might not be able to. Y'all are jumping straight to, oh my God, they're going to kill black men in the street. First of all, no, you're not going to have the power to go out and be immune from killing people, because now you have more power than the president himself. No president is going to sign off for somebody to have the right to kill them and be immune from it. These are the things that we have to think about. Additionally, like I said, the status quo already is that black men are getting killed by police and they're not being held accountable for it. So to act like Trump has emboldened police by saying this is ridiculous, because this was a problem under Obama. And we all asked Obama to sign an executive order to make it mandatory that police wear body cams. And what did Obama do? He got on stage, cried, and said if he had a son, he'd look like Trayvon, and we got not one piece of legislation. Instead, right after that, he just gave gays the right to marry, and we forgot all about our man Trayvon. Also, what's that? He
also allowed prisoners to come out that have been in jail for years that shouldn't have had the sentencing that they have.
Donald Trump also did that with the First Step Act.
Well, let's talk about
Either way, when it comes to policing, the status quo is the status quo. And much like you said, the only way to, if we're talking about the Central Park 5, blaming Trump for something that a white woman did, to blame Trump for something that a white woman caused, to blame Trump for being the reason why all of New York was mad at 5 young men because a white DA, Democratic DA at that, forced them into a false confession, is one of the things that is the reason why black folks aren't being taken seriously when we're having these conversations. Trump, yes, took out a full-page ad. Why? Because he was reflecting the views of everybody in New York at that time. If you talk to anybody in New York at that time, the only news that they had were that 5 young men went to Central Park, they jumped and raped and assaulted a woman almost to death. And then they all got arrested and they all told police that they did it. This is not the age of social media where now we can look up conflicting reports and look up police reports and things like that. This is a time where all people had was the TV and the newspaper. And therefore, those 5 boys to all of New York were guilty. And they, at the time, the perception was they were the trash that needed to get out of the city because they were ruining New York. That is the sentiment of every black, white, Asian, Latino, whoever at that time who had that news. Now, Trump, being a businessman in New York, of course, is going to do something that he feels might appease his constituents. So if he's doing business with these black, brown, Hispanic, Asian, white, whoever, and they're all pissed that these 5 boys decided to go to a park, assault this woman, and then confess to it, how can you blame Trump for acting on the information that he had?
I'll go back to the policing piece. So the police that actually coerced.
The DA is who coerced them.
Which works with the police, right?
But you were about to vote for a Democratic DA who did the same thing to black men, and nobody saw it as an issue. Yet we bring up the Central Park 5 that happened in the 80s, yet Kamala Harris was doing this in the 90s and 2000s.
But wasn't they wrongfully accused? That came.
They were wrongfully accused, and Kamala Harris was wrongfully accused in people as well.
Kamala had a job. That's a job as a DA.
So the white DA had a job too. So why is it now that what she falsely accused 5 men was wrong, but when Kamala Harris did it, it was okay?
What 5 men did she wrong with?
I can't tell you their names, but we can look at Jamal Truelove right now, who was almost on death row because of Kamala Harris, and he was only set free because the governor forced her hand. There's actually multiple cases of it, but Jamal is somebody I've had personal conversations with, so his name pops up to me the most. However, all it takes is a quick Google search, and you can see that Kamala Harris was not only jailing men who were wrongfully accused of crimes, but she was also jailing single mothers like ourselves because their children were being truant. Now, I don't know your financial situation, and luckily, like for me, things aren't as hard as they were when she was born. But for the moms who are working 2 to 3 jobs to take care of their kids, and they're not there to make sure that their kid is getting on the school bus, or they're not there until long after the kid is already supposed to be home, how can that mother who's already doing everything in her power to ensure that she's raising her child right, how is it her fault that she didn't know her kid wasn't going to school? Yet thanks to Kamala Harris, a DA, she was taking those mothers to jail, imposing fines, jail time, causing these mothers to lose their jobs, calling these mothers to be evicted. Now let's talk about people being wrongfully convicted, because we can talk about the one single mother whose name I cannot remember right now, but her daughter had sickle cell, and she was missing a lot of school because of her disease. It was medically necessary. But all Kamala Harris did was go up to the school and say, who's been absent the most? And they mentioned this young girl. She didn't ask why she had been absent. She didn't investigate the reasoning behind it. She just showed up to that woman's job and arrested the mother. The mother couldn't afford to pay the bail. The mother had to go to trial. Of course, eventually she got out, but she lost her job. And her daughter were evicted and had to go from homeless shelter to homeless shelter. And this is somebody who we were, y'all were about to vote for. And it's like, I don't get how you guys can be so upset at Trump, who had no political power, who had no legal power at the time to do anything to those boys. Yet for whatever reason, I'm telling you that the white Democratic DA did it. We're still not blaming her. And then I'm telling you about Kamala Harris, who was the quote unquote black Democratic DA who did the same thing, yet for whatever reason, she was deserving of the highest office in the land. Yet Donald Trump, because he took out an ad based off the information that he had, the same information that was given to everybody else, he does not deserve to be
also funded it. So I just want to.
He also funded Jesse Jackson's campaigns for president, but we don't talk about this.
There were some additional findings that when she went to the school, because the school is also responsible for when there are kids that have like certain diseases, like the 504 is put in place or IEP is put in place. So I think we don't have all the exclusive references.
That mother should have never went to jail. That was the case.
Facts. So I think we get
the fact is the mother should have never went to jail. Trump didn't have all of the facts when he took out the ad, right? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, you did. You just stated. He didn't have all the facts when he took out the ads. He used the information that he had, just like Kamala Harris used the information that he had, that she had.
Is what my question.
The news, the same news that we keep talk about, the same people that we keep referring to when we're talking about the things we've heard about Trump. Because I've never heard Trump say anything about taking special needs classes or resources out of the schools, and yet you're telling me that's something you heard out of his mouth.
And so. Do you not believe, Michaela, that voting for Trump, not even voting for Trump, but supporting Trump is a betrayal to black women?
No, because what about Trump says you're anti-black woman? Not believing that we need ultra access to abortion is an anti-black woman, especially when you consider that only 50% of us are being born right now. What's really anti-black is supporting abortion. How is it anti-black if I don't want drag queen story hour happening at my daughter's school? Actually allowing my daughter to be in a space where sexuality is expressed heavily, introduced to them, is to me a form of grooming. Why would my daughter be comfortable speaking about sexual things with an adult that's not her family? If she has this question about her sexuality, if she has a question about touching herself or whatever, she should come to me with that, not whoever her teacher is. To me, that's grooming. So what about that is beneficial to black people?
I will say though that one of the things that, because I agree that sex within talking about sex with children like is unacceptable, especially in school. And even and maybe you could elaborate on this. There was something in reference to pushing a law that removed the parenting rights away from the parent. Like if my child went to school and said that they were
a boy.
You're interested in boy. They were saying that's none of my business. That they didn't have a right to tell me that that the law would protect the child and not like. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
So one of the most extreme examples of this would be with the proposed VP Tim Walz. He's the governor of Minnesota, I believe it is, Missouri, and he made it Missouri a sanctuary state. A lot of people praise that because it's like, oh, you can get an abortion without any limits there. If any other state, if it's illegal in your state, you go get an abortion in his state, they won't work with authorities to arrest you. What they didn't mention is that you can also, as young as 6 years old, if your child wants to transition as young as age 6 and you can't find a doctor to do it, you can go to Tim Walz's state and force a doctor to do it. If your parent does not want you to transition and you're over the age of 6, so you could be 8 years old, meet some predator online, tell them that, express to them that you feel like you're a boy, but your mommy won't let you be a boy, and that predator can pick you up from school, take you to the airport, fly you to Tim Walz's state. You can get that surgery, you can get the hormones. They will never inform your parents. Wow. And then when your parents find out that you're in Missouri or Minnesota, whichever state it is, the local officials in that state will not work with the local officials in your state to bring you your child back. So this is how extreme it gets when you open the door. It starts with schools. Then they see the public acceptance of, oh, okay, well, the teacher can tell that person's daughter that she's a boy, and the teacher can keep a closet full of gender neutral clothes so kids can come to school and change, and the teacher can call them by a different name while they're at school, and none of these things have to be told to the parent. Now, while the teacher might think they're doing a child a good thing by providing them a safe space, think about the conflict that child is going through with the life that they live at home versus the life that they have at school. Now, unfortunately, you're taking away from the educational aspect at school because that child is not focused on learning. That child is focused on expressing themselves. And again, this is why the parents' right thing is important, because these are conversations that teachers should be having with parents, so the parents can work to collaborate on a cohesive way to make that child feel safe, to make that child feel seen. When you separate the two, you are now turning that child against their parents, and you now have that child dependent on a public education system and everybody who works in it. And unfortunately, that allows for, as we've seen in the most coming years, we see more teachers sleeping with students. That's not a coincidence. These children are comfortable speaking sexual, doing sexual things, masturbating with their teachers because their entire life it's been their teachers teaching them this subject matter. Yeah. And that's why, a lot of us had an issue with it. And that's why, that was a lot of the driving force behind Trump. I feel like if you ask a lot of black women why they voted for Trump, education will be the first thing that comes to mind.
And honestly, though, too, I think one of the pieces that a lot of people aren't talking about is the fact that a lot of people did not show up to vote at all, right? Because I was looking at the numbers, and Trump lost against Biden. He had 74 million votes. He won with 72 million. So 2 million people voted less for Trump against Kamala than when he lost against Biden. But the other piece of it, though, is 18 million people didn't vote. Right? And so a lot of people actually just sat it out and said, you know what, I'm not voting. Part of it, could be that they were forcing Kamala onto people, right? And there wasn't a clear agenda, and it wasn't a clear it wasn't clear democracy, if you will, right? Because if you think about Joe Biden and people, feeling like Joe Biden knew that he should have dropped out earlier to allow a democratic process where, people who are Democrats, I'm an independent, just for the record, but people who are Democrat could vote for a Democratic candidate, but instead, there was a wait until the last hour, and then there was an appointment of Kamala Harris, which was never truly voted for. So I want to ask you, based on that, like, do you really feel like, right? You have one rhetoric that says, Donald Trump is the end of democracy, and then you have us watching sort of, the Democrats not really following a democratic process. So you have one group saying this person is a threat to something, but then if based on what I said, there is another group who's actually showing you that this is not a democratic process. Like, no one has ever voted for Kamala, not as VP, right? Because they voted for Joe Biden as president. Kamala was appointed vice president. And then even as a presidential nominee, Democrats did not vote for her. She was sort of like appointed. And so if from the outside looking in, it almost looks like that wasn't a democratic process. So like, what do you say to that?
So I would say we didn't have any, up to me, who was going to be the next one to come in place besides Kamala, who's in with Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. So at that point, she was all we had. Mm-hmm. And they put her in those places. She's been in every legislature that, you know, in her career. Versus you state that there wasn't a clear, but there was a plan. If I had to say, did Trump have a clear plan? From what I saw, I didn't hear the plan from what he stated, because it was also, you know, chapter 25, that's it, and people went for that. But when I saw, you know, the Republican Party switching to come over and support Kamala, I think there was some inconsistencies there, I'll be honest, with some of the voters that wasn't really sure as to why they were like, I'm just pushing my hand back, given whatever reason. But I would think it'd be amazing to get those in a room to say, why didn't you vote for her? But for me, it just looked like we had a somewhat of a path versus looking at a Trump saying, you know, what are you saying we're doing? It wasn't a plan. Mm-hmm. Per se. Mm-hmm.
And why do you think, or what's your thought process around that rhetoric that Trump is going to end democracy, Project 2025, you know, we're doomed, we're all going to, you know, go back to the 60s?
I'll never forget, after the election, a lady was on Instagram like, oh, I don't want to go to sleep because I'm gonna wake up a slave. Like, I saw a whole bunch of just ridiculousness. First off, Project 2025 has nothing to do with Donald Trump or his administration. He has denounced Project 2025. He has told the American public time and time again that that is not his agenda. His agenda was available on his website from day one. There were 25, you know, points and plans of action for what he would do as president. And Project 2025 was not listed on there, not linked on there. It was never us. And unfortunately, the Democratic Party did a really good job at misinforming the public and pushing Project 2025 because it was put up or published by a conservative organization. The Heritage Foundation has been around since forever. All right. The original Project 2025 came out like 20 years ago. So it's not like this was a new thing. It's not like these were just super ultra conservative things and people just wanted to end the world one day, or they just thought Donald Trump would be the guy to do it. These people have been pushing for these principles, and it's a manifesto is a manifesto. And what we don't talk about is the fact that every large, either super liberal or super conservative group will produce a manifesto. It's basically them coming to the candidate saying, I have all of these votes and I have all of this money and we're willing to back you, but this is what we would like to see from you. This is what we stand for. The NAACP did the same thing with Joe Biden, and we saw nothing from their manifesto. So to think that the Heritage Foundation was going to approach Trump and we were going to see everything from their manifesto was just ridiculous. Now, moving forward in regards to why people didn't trust her, the democratic process was skipped. And so it seemed like the Democratic Party was doing a lot of deflecting. We're going to blame Trump for everything that we're doing. Skipping over a primary is the most disrespectful, just showcase of we're getting rid of a democracy that I can think of. Because at the end of the day, all these people knew that Joe Biden's mental health was declining. All of these people knew that Joe Biden could not get in the stage and actually defend himself. All these people knew that Joe Biden was incompetent to continue to serve as president. Yet all these people, regardless of all the rumors that were going around, because remember, Trump was calling him Sleepy Joe. Trump was making fun of him for months. So Trump had already told us that Joe Biden needed to go. Right? But everybody kept saying, oh, he's just a hater. Look at how childish he is. He's calling people names, da da da. Then we get to the debate stage and everybody sees for themselves, oh snap, Trump was telling the truth and the Democrats were actually lying to us. Now, the Democrats did a really good job at getting ahead of their lie and just putting up Kamala Harris, hoping that we would shut up instead of questioning why in the world didn't y'all get Joe Biden out of the race sooner. And what's also interesting is the Democrats being really hush-hush on the fact that they pushed Joe Biden out and said that you can now rerun, yet he's still sitting as our current president. And so that's why people did not trust Kamala Harris, because she literally forced her way in. Because had we had a primary, when she participated in the last primary in 2020, she only obtained 2% of the vote. So had we did a primary again, Kamala Harris would have not been at the top of our ticket. If we're being honest, the people wanted Mark Kelly. If we're being honest, the people wanted Shapiro. If we're being honest, the people wanted to feel the burn again. You know, people did not want Kamala Harris to be at the top of their ticket. And had we instituted a primary, we would have seen that, and whoever the Democratic Party did vote to be at the top of the ticket probably would have had a better chance at winning. Because at the end of the day, when we look at the popular vote, Kamala did do very well.
She did.
You know? And so if we had a candidate that more people resonated with, if we had a candidate that people could trust, then the Democrats probably would have taken this election. You know, and it's not because of policies. It would have literally just been off sensationalism. Joe Biden only won the first time because of sensationalism. Everybody swore that Trump was so bad and the world was over, because much like people were crying after this election, they were crying after the last one. Oh, we did. Everything's going to change. And now people are crying because what? They can't fill up their tanks. They can't put food on the table. They can't pay their mortgage. They can't find a second job to make up for the new money that they all of a sudden have to get. They can't afford the child care prices that spiked overnight. Like, these are all things that people are dealing with now. And she chose to ignore all of those things by saying she was middle class. What's middle class about having 2 doctors for parents? What's middle class about growing up in Canada and going to one of the best private schools that they have? What's middle class about any of that? And so trying to relate to the plight of people when you've never actually experienced the things that they're suffering through at the hands of your administration is why she lost. Not handling your duties as borders are. At the end of the day, you cannot deny the mess that's at the border. And I think we had a lot of people not vote, not because of simple voter apathy, because we've been doing better these past couple of years, but a lot of people were conflicted. They can't deny their status quo, yet something in them told them they just couldn't vote for Trump. So they stayed home. They knew that staying home was basically a vote for Trump. But since they didn't physically cast that ballot, they felt better about their decision. And so much like we saw with Stacey Abrams, there was a lot of sensationalism around Stacey Abrams. You have this black woman, HBCU grad. She's everything. She's going to be the first black woman female governor of Georgia. She went and she registered all these people to vote. 600,000 people were registered to vote under fair fight. Why did only 180,000 of them go vote for her? It's all just sensationalism. People love to show their support online. People like to follow trends. People like to look good on social media. People are not actually about that action.
But what about, like, as a mother to a daughter, what about the history that, you know, having a woman president like that, like, what about that?
We can have a woman president, just not her. I feel like when it comes to her, just by looking at her interviews and her current performance as VP, because we can sit here and pretend like a vice president can't do anything. The vice president is control of the Senate. For those of you who really know government, the Senate is low-key more powerful than the president. Therefore, she had a lot of power to address a lot of the things that are affecting America. She chose not to. She was the tie-breaking vote on a lot of things that unfortunately hurt America. And she was proud of that and said she wouldn't change anything about it. So when you look at how could, you know, I be a mom and, you know, support this or not want this woman to run, she just wasn't the best woman. And so it's like, while people are saying she would have opened doors for other black women to be the president, right? To me, I saw she would have got in there, messed it up, and they would have blamed everything bad on her. The economy tanks, it's all Kamala's fault. These children can't read, it's all Kamala's fault. In the same way we're blaming Trump for everything bad that's been going on for 20 years, Kamala would have got it way worse. And as black women, we know that's the truth. She would have got it way worse. And so while we would have loved to parade her as the woman who was going to open doors for other black women, if anything, she would have closed them for us. Because people would have been like, the last time we took a chance, we see what happened. So it's on us as black people to make sure we're propping up the best of the best. There was nothing, we didn't have all of this rhetoric around Obama. Obama could sit down for an hour interview with people who agreed with him and people who didn't, and he would turn out just fine. Obama could go into any crowd, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, whoever, and make everybody love him. Kamala Harris did not have that appeal. She did not have that allure. She was not that captivating. And because of such, she wasn't the right person for the job. You know, Hillary almost did it. And Hillary, to me, would have done a better job than Kamala Harris was saying that she was going to do. And if Hillary couldn't get in and she performed better on the campaign trail, I don't know why we thought for a second that somebody who had been on the campaign trail for less than 100 days was going to somehow take that office.
Yeah, I would say that they said Trump did that, but I wanted to just speak to something that you said. She made it in, and you know, to be at top of the ticket. So I think there was a host of...
She didn't make it in democratically. That's the thing.
But
the process that should have taken place was skipped in order for her to be on top of the ticket.
which she made. So I would just say...
She didn't make it.
What I want to say is just that, you know, what is your thoughts in reference to the abortion and monitoring of your uterus, IVF, things of that sort?
So one, nobody's monitoring your uterus. That was something that was mentioned in Project 2025. And once again, that has nothing to do with the Trump administration. So we need to get away from that. Trump has got up and said, number one, that he believes in the exceptions. So rape, incest, and the life of the mother, abortion will always be available to those women. Trump has also said that 6 weeks is too early for a cutoff date because a lot of women are just finding out that they're pregnant at those 6 weeks. So Trump, just by himself, his recommendation is that states allow for exceptions and that states allow abortions past 6 weeks. Now, where they're going to cap it at, that's left up to the states. Now, when we talk about IVF, Trump also got up and said that IVF will now be federally funded and your insurance, if you are insured, will be forced to cover IVF. So to say that we're going to get rid of IVF is ridiculous because only under us is IVF going to be more accessible and more affordable for women who have dreams of becoming a mother. Now, when it comes to the abortion debate, period, abortion itself is rooted in racism. So why black people are the main proponents of abortion? Well, maybe not us. Let me not say that. I think that it's the media who makes it seem like black people are the main proponents of abortion. Because black women, if we're both single mothers, clearly we have our babies, regardless of how hard things might be, you know, but they're pushing us to not have our babies, and it's been like that since its inception. Now, if we look at the goal of the KKK, if we look at the goal of COINTELPRO, if we look at the goals of all these super major races, it was always to exterminate the black race and to prevent the upcoming of a new messiah. Nobody that was going to be able to lead us and show us how bad things are and get us out of this social minds and start worrying about things that are important, you know?
Planned Parenthood.
Yeah. So when we're talking about abortion and we look at the fact that they were trying to exterminate us and keep us, you know, disillusioned and disarray, chaotic, that's exactly what abortion does. First of all, 50% of us are never born thanks to abortion. If you add up the statistics from gun violence, heart attack, stroke, cancer, high blood pressure, HIV and AIDS, all of those numbers added together still fail in comparison to how many of us die at the hands of abortion. Next, less than 1% of abortions are because somebody was raped in an instance of incest or because the life of the mother was, you know, impacted. So that accounts for less than 1%. What accounts for 80% of abortions is men coercing the woman into doing so. By telling her she's not going to be there, by telling her that nobody wants to date a single mother, by reminding her of how much shame comes along with being a single mother. So a lot of the abortions we see women getting aren't because they want them, it's because they feel like they have to do that.
You said 80%.
80% is coercion. And so it's not because a woman got pregnant and was like, I don't want no baby, I'm not ready to be a mom. It's she was sitting there and dealing with the complex emotions that come with being pregnant. And in doing so, she had all this outside influence. The father, maybe her family members, maybe her friends telling her that having a baby is not a good look for her. Now, unfortunately, you see these other races aren't telling their women that. If a young Mexican girl gets pregnant, while the family won't celebrate her being irresponsible, they will not let that baby go without. They will come together as a village. The same thing with an Asian. The same thing with white people. Whether or not the family is happy with her decision, they will still come together to make sure that that baby has whatever that it needs. The village, the community will come back. Only with black people do we not do that. Grandma don't grandma no more. Grandma in the club with you. You feel me? Auntie don't auntie no more because auntie trying to find her man because she spent her youth raising kids too. You know, mamas ain't grandma no more like they used to because mom is young or mom is impacted by all these different societal effects. So when it comes to abortion and access to abortion, when you look at all these people who are screaming, we need abortion, why? Why? Because if I just told you that abortion is only necessary in 1% of cases, why do you need abortion so bad? Why was abortion an issue that should have driven me to the polls? Let's talk about you screaming about abortion screams, I want to be irresponsible. Because now, as we saw in the wake of the election results, you saw women saying, oh, we need to stop having sex with men. Oh, we need to stop dating men. Or, oh, we need to do this. What's wrong with filtering out the men that are in your life? So for me, hold on, baby, you got to sit down. Sorry, y'all. Maya, you gotta go sit down. I see your cartoons. You gotta go sit down. So,
We keeping that in there too.
we'll be like, So it's like, what was I about to say?
I would say this because you're mentioning numbers, and I would need to go check back those in reference to why abortion. Because there is an influx of incest, there is an influx of rape, there is several things that may happen that may cause it. Even though the lady that was the example for Kamala, who died because that wasn't an option.
She got an abortion. No, she didn't die because she couldn't get an abortion. She died from the side effects from taking the abortion pill, which you're not telling.
But she was unable to go and do what she needed to do on herself.
That was medical negligence that had nothing to do with the abortion laws in place. Because here's one thing. She was able to obtain the abortion pill. That lets you know that the abortion laws in our state did not affect her ability to choose, right? Then from taking said abortion pill, the fetus did not expel fully. She went into sepsis. At that point, sepsis is life or death. Your doctor signed any doctor working in a hospital signed an oath to save the life of whoever came before them. Therefore, when she was dying in front of those doctors, it was on them to make sure that she lived.
But she had the first state to go to.
They chose not to. No, that's on the doctors. And she, instead of letting Kamala Harris use her as a political pundit, she should have went ahead and called a big-time lawyer to sue the hospital and the doctors who refused to give her the life-saving treatment that she needed. That was not Trump's fault, and it had nothing to do with an abortion ban.
But did she have to leave and go to another state?
No, she didn't have to. That's what she chose.
Okay.
We back up.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Appreciate you, Phil.
Well, she didn't get to tell her point, though. So the last thing I said was, if women are now feeling like they shouldn't be having so much sex and they have to filter out the type of men they're spending time with, what's wrong with that?
I was responding to, we have all the kids having sex and having babies, and I wanted to talk about how a lot of sex education has been taken out of the school. So there's no education that's being provided I'm old school, that I had in my day, where it gave you that housing to know this is what you need to be careful for. This is what they took that completely out. Now it's like you have to fill out a consent form in order for your kid to be able to partake in understanding what sex education is, because we have a lack of that. That's where it starts, where those kids are in unhealthy relationships, on unhealthy social medias, and things of that sort, which is causing some of these rates to go high. We were at a school and there was kids and their fathers, maybe 16, 17, with newborns. However, the school has now a daycare. So the thing about it is that it's just there's lack of knowledge. And when we say lack of knowledge, there's lack of knowledge because that was something that was taken out of school that I feel we should still have in. It will speak to the transgender piece. It'll have all of those, because we can't separate those kids out because there's something that's happening there. But do we have them go back to school at home? Because some of those parents can't afford to homeschool their kids. So we have to have some type of option or something that we are sorting out. If this kid is this kid is that, how do we fix that? And that's what I'm more concerned about in the education space too. But also with the abortion piece, we lack sex education in schools.
But as adults, I think that we all know that sex makes babies. So with the children and the teen pregnancy thing, I agree. We need more education, because when I was taking sex ed, I'm pretty young, y'all. I'm only 28. So this was like 2010, 2011, and they weren't allowed to show you condoms or bananas anymore.
Right.
And so it's like now you can tell kids to have safe sex, but like a young boy shouldn't learn how to put on a condom right before he's about to have sex, because that's how condoms break, that's how condoms come off, that's how condoms snap, all of those things. So it's like I wholeheartedly agree that the education piece for our youth can be better. But in regards to these women, and it was women aged 35 to 65 who voted the most, and those women, black women, 80% of us voted for Kamala. And so a lot of them said women's rights, women's rights, women's rights. And so when I saw like women saying like, I have a daughter, I want her to be able to choose, I'm like, why would your daughter ever be in a situation where she would need an abortion? Like, if you're able to be an activist so that your daughter can get an abortion, you should also then have enough time and energy to teach your daughter the right way to carry herself and go about things so that she doesn't need an abortion. Again, like, sex education should still be taught in schools, but it's still the responsibility of the parent. Because it's also on the parent to be strict enough to not have their kid outside in the streets all the time so that they can get pregnant. I never had boys over. I was never allowed to go anywhere. So I made it out through high school, no pregnancies, barely had sex. So it's like, for me, abortion shouldn't be something that we celebrate in the Black community. It shouldn't be something that we propose in the Black community. It shouldn't be something that we are just going so hell-bent for it in the Black community, because while we're doing so, we're also forgetting the 1/3 of Black women who can't conceive, whether it be due to endometriosis, PCOS, uterine fibroids, genetics, all of those things. If there's billions of dollars being allocated to make sure that women can get an abortion for free, why aren't there billions of dollars also allocated to researching these health concerns and helping women who do want to become mothers? When we're talking about women's health and reproductive health care, it should not only be synonymous with abortion, because not every woman wants an abortion. And then, to not leave y'all out, there's a lot of men who I know at my age, their early 30s, if they don't have kids, it's usually because a woman got pregnant, decided she didn't want to have the baby, also didn't ask him his input, and went ahead and had an abortion. And so we don't talk enough about that either. Again, 80% of them is because a woman was coerced. One of the main things people told me when I was about to have my baby is I'll never get a man, because no man wants a used up single mom, I don't know, girl. I had no problem with no date. But think about it, when you're young, that's enough to scare you into going ahead and get an abortion. When you're young, that's enough to make you feel like, okay, I could just do it again. We should never see life as something that can just be discarded and we can just go do it again. That in itself, internalizing those kind of emotions, is why we see people fighting all the time, damn near to the death, shooting each other, and we're desensitized to it. We don't tie it back to abortion, but abortion that's a death. Because if a woman has a miscarriage, we allow her to grieve. But if she has an abortion, we're acting like she doesn't have to. That's a lot. So yeah, it's a very slippery slope. So it's like, when it comes to grown women, I think that abortion, of course, is a decision that everybody makes on their own. And as single mothers, we can tell people this is not easy. It is not for everybody. So I can't sit here and tell you that I don't understand why some people don't sign up for this. What I will tell you is I'm not affected, nor do I feel offended or like my rights have been imposed on, because the government said that it's not going to be so easy to just get rid of this one and do it again. I think that along with education about sex, when we talk about your alternatives, abortion, adoption, whatever, we need to tell women, like the young lady Amber who died here, sepsis is a common side effect from the pill. And when you decide to get a D&E, a lot of women don't talk about the infertility rates that stem from that, or the direct link to breast cancer that comes from that. And so you have women who are getting all these abortions in their 20s, trying to make sure that they're this prime stake for whatever man decides to marry them. They get married to this man who also has no children, and he's successful. He's taking care of her. They're ready to start a family. Her uterine wall is now so weak that she will never carry a baby to term, because she aborted it to death in her 20s. So now in her 30s and 40s, she can't give the man that she loves a child, because she thought he wouldn't love her if she already had one. So now, is that man wrong if he decides to go pursue something with somebody else because he wants children? No. And unfortunately, you see it a lot, where a woman not being able to have kids will cause a lot of strife in a lot of people's marriages. And like we saw, like Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union, he went and had a baby on the side. Now, a lot of women wouldn't stay after that, but imagine the psyche, what's going on with Gabrielle's psyche, knowing that she can't have children, and he went and had a baby with somebody else. And every day she wakes up and has to deal with that. Not a lot of women can deal with that. So now, what does that do for the child that this man had? If the wife stays, she might mistreat the child, just out of jealousy. Or what does that say just for the marriage? Now the husband might, treat the woman terribly because he's frustrated and he doesn't know how to express himself. Abortion opens the door for so many issues and other.
You have a message.
Yeah.
That the fact that we're out here saying in songs, I'll spend that 500 before I ever trap you. The fact that one of the hottest female rappers right now is telling her entire fan base that she's got a membership at that place, that is destructive. Wow. It is extremely destructive, and it is extremely harmful. And if more Black women understood the effects that come along with it, if more Black women, for me, I didn't get it because I thought I'd never have another baby. All the women in my life who I knew who had an abortion are no longer able to have children. And I didn't want that to be for me. And so it's like, yeah, I would hate it if a man counted me out because I had a child, but I would hate myself if I never had children. I'm also adopted, so I have a very complicated relationship with my mother. So like, motherhood has always been something that I wanted. I don't think anybody would have ever been able to talk me out of it, but not every woman has that experience, you know? And so I just wish that women had the information and had the space to feel like they could do what they wanted to do.
I think when you spoke on Gabrielle and her bedside baby, she eventually went on and they did a surrogate to have her. So I think, you know, she dealt with that pain, but also she provided him with a child as well to, you know, to have an option. She had an option.
Yo, man, we see men cheat.
Agree.
They had a baby, then you go have that baby right beside them.
That was her choice, but at that point,
but it's not that she's children.
Well, she's taking, like you said, she's accepting that child that's outside. They dealt with it, but then at the same time, she always wanted to have a kid, and I think because of endometriosis, she can't have kids or what have you. But she did have one, and she chose a different method. But they don't have that, right? But that's just an example to show women that, you know, maybe you had this experience, but they're growing from it.
They're growing, but not everybody. I don't know. If it was me, I couldn't grow from that, you know. And that's what I just, you know. And so it's like, again, it's just not fair for women to have to deal with these situations, because at the end of the day, whether she grew from it or not, the kids still have to deal with all of that comes with it, and it's not.
One of the things that I enjoy about this conversation, though, is that we can have a conversation, right?
Use this.
And I think one of the things that I felt like,
right, I just need to show that, right?
It's the foot. I don't say,
yeah, and I think that's important, because I think one of the things that was disheartening for me, like I remember recently actually hearing black woman on television inviting a psychiatrist on and encouraging black people to that it's okay to not spend time with your family if they voted a different way, right? And to me, that's like crazy, right? Because how do you grow, or how do you like when did the opposite, or having a different opinion made you look and say, I can't even be around you? Like literally, I'm watching online how people are calling people names if they voted for Trump, if they didn't vote for Kamala. There's this whole division that is happening, which is disheartening, right? Like, JP and I talk all the time about the importance of even just like, let's just take religion for example, right? Like, Josh and I do not have the same religion, but we talk about God together, because I'm not gonna, like, that's my brother still. Like, it doesn't matter. Right. Like, I'm not judging his choices. He's not judging my choices. It's really like what other people, their difference of opinion, I believe, is what makes us stronger as a people, right? Can you talk a little bit about, Josh, about like this division, or us accepting of shiny objects, if you will, that is almost making people not take us seriously, if you will.
Yeah, thank you for segueing into that. But because there's a lot of things to touch on. I'll be brief, but for one, even the back and forth between Michaela and Tamika, like, a lot of families, a lot of friends can't recover from that. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people that are having these types of conversations about important topics, but they can't see that person outside of their views or their beliefs. They're no longer, that's no longer my brother, that's no longer my sister, because of your choice, which is very unfortunate. Yeah. I'm also tired of the fact that people play off of human beings' emotions, but especially in our community, when it comes to this, there's a heavy play off of emotions, right? Mm-hmm. We've been talking for an hour and a half, bro. Maybe an hour of that has been about women's rights, abortion, this, that, like, which is nothing wrong with that. But because it's so heavy, right, One thing I want to also remind people of is the importance of a father, the importance of a man present, right? And it doesn't have to be you in the same house. It could be two individuals working together. But we've forgotten about a lot of these things because women's rights are important, but women's rights also gets played to the benefit of who's ever discussing it in most cases. And we don't realize that, right? That was something heavily on this vote that was used a lot. Listen, I've talked to people in my family. Oh, what about abortion? This, that, and the third. Like, what about this is my body, my choice. Men don't have that same. I ain't never heard a man be like, my body, my choice, but regardless of something else. Right? Wow. So you pull that card and you play that card when it's beneficial and good for you, but then you want to ignore the facts behind it.
Yeah.
Right? Y'all were talking, facts got introduced into the conversation. So whenever you say there's millions, hundreds of millions of people, and out of the hundreds of millions of people, let's say 500 million people in the United States, let's say 1 million went through abortion because of rape, incest, or whatever else. So we're going to make the other 499 million people eat this porridge that you want to give me because of the low number of people that this is happening to. And that's no disrespect to those people.
Yeah.
And sometimes we lose sight of perspective. So it's so many things that are taking place, and I wish that people would just understand that. And that's why it is important. For one, I'm glad we're able to have this conversation.
Yeah.
And I want to salute y'all. And I've been watching and just because I want to listen, I want to learn, but I'm also watching a dynamic that breaks our community up. That's why this panel and this discussion is so important, because I watched, I ain't gonna say her name, but she went, to your point, she's very well known. She's married to a football player and a former football player. And she was like, if you voted for this particular individual, you're not my friend, you're not my family, don't call me. Like, you just disowned everybody because of a choice.
Yeah.
Which is also the reason why I feel like people won't vote properly.
Yeah.
No matter if it's Trump, Biden, Kamala, whoever, they won't vote properly because you don't want to be shunned out of your community. So we don't.
A lot of people say that.
But they're also a bigger part of the problem.
Yeah.
But because the thing that I hate, barbershop talk.
Oh, no.
Choose which one is your poison. What does that mean? You know what I'm saying? Like the evils, which I feel is very destructive, it's divisive, and it's disappointing.
Yeah.
For me, you know what I'm saying? And I hope that based on this dialogue, we can advance and move further to try to look at policy for what it is, how it actually aligns, what serves your beliefs, your family, your structure, your community. All of these things that are extremely important that we don't necessarily dive into, because guess what? I'm a smart politician. I'm gonna play off your emotions. I'm a smart politician. I know what's gonna set you off. I'm a smart politician. I know how I'm gonna get to you, Ash. I'm gonna touch you here. I'm gonna do whatever. And we spend so much time in emotion going back and forth that we don't necessarily get to the root. And I'm just glad, I want to salute everybody in this space right now. Because it's not an easy thing to do.
Sure.
And to still be able to look at that person with love and honor and dignity, but not going there based on your beliefs or anything else. Because I know for me, I wouldn't be able to have friends. I wouldn't be able to have, a lot of relationships that I have based on my beliefs. And I'm not talking religion. I'm not talking politics. I'm talking about morals, value, and principle.
See, that's the rhetoric that I'm hearing. Like, people who are online saying that they can't be friends with somebody who voted for Trump is because of that. They're saying because of, he's a racist, he's a fascist, he's a sexist, and all of these he's a convicted felon and all this other stuff.
What about how racist we are?
Right.
Yeah.
You ever thought about?
But I just feel like black people acted so disgusted at folks who voted for Trump, but they still let the molesting uncle eat at Thanksgiving dinner.
Right.
I just feel like y'all are so mad at Trump, but y'all auntie who sleep with everybody's husband is still open arms at the cookout. Y'all are so upset about Trump, but your son who be sliding on the ops is right here sitting next to you at Christmas. Like, we're willing to cut people off political choices, but we won't say anything to the people in our families who are actively causing harm to others, whether it be in our family, our community, or just to overall the human race, period. So it's like, if you're a molester, a pervert, if you are a killer, if you are somebody who doesn't respect the sanctity of marriage and you just out here taking everybody, man, like, why is it that we celebrate you? Why is it that we can align ourselves with you, even though that might not be morally what we agree with, or that might not be something that we could see ourselves doing, or if we knew anybody else was a rapist, we'd be disgusted. But because it's our cousin, all of a sudden it's all, well, we don't know what happened, or, oh, she fast, and telling little girls they got Jezebel spirits and stuff like that. And it's just, that to me is why I just can't respect any of what I see now, because I know growing up how many stories I heard of little girls and little boys talking about their babysitter or their cousin or their aunt or uncle touching them inappropriately, and it just being brushed under the rug. Why can't somebody's, election decision be brushed under the rug?
So Michaela, what could we expect right now that election is over and Donald Trump is and will be the 47th president of the United States of America? I believe you are going to be part of, can you talk a little administration? What can we expect from Donald J. Trump? Right, is J?
Yeah.
Donald J. Trump.
Yeah.
Come January 2025, in God's will.
Well, we're definitely getting the illegals out. Regardless of how folks feel about it, you commit a crime. Here we said you do the crime, you do the time. So here, you came here legally, you get deported. Like, it's an unfortunate statistic for those who felt like they had to come here as a last resort, but you knew the consequences when you came. So first 100 days, honestly, day one is probably when that would start. We will see an entire revamp of our education system. How long it's going to take to diminish the DOE, I do not know, but I do see that we're going to do everything in our power to change how we educate our children. And while in 4 years we cannot just get rid of illiteracy, we can definitely get ourselves on the right track to get rid of or at least deplete the illiteracy rate that we have now. You will see more power being given back to the states, and I hope that with that, the general public will understand how much better that is for a democracy, rather than having the government control everything. So like with abortion, the government said that basically you just couldn't ban it, but there was no limitations on when it could be done. Now, state by state, they'll set their limitations. So if you saw in Florida, there was an amendment to raise the gestational age for abortion. It failed. So now I believe abortion is only available at 12 or 16 weeks in Florida. Here in Georgia, it's at 6, but during the midterms, if enough people petition for it, we can ask that it be raised to 8 or 12. In California, you're going to be able to get an abortion whenever, wherever. So it's just, I think people will better understand states' rights and how your voice is more important locally than federally. Because federal, yes, it helps because you want to vote for somebody who's going to make sure money is pouring into the systems that are important to you. But only locally do they allocate that money to said systems properly so that they are addressing the issues. Because Governor Kemp pours more money into education every year. But unfortunately, I don't see Andre Dickens doing enough to make sure the kids can read. So it's like, federal matters because you want certain things to be prioritized, but local matters more because that's how it's going to be enacted. So with these 4 years, I think that that's what we're going to see. We're going to see Americans be prioritized, which we really haven't seen since the Bush era. We probably will see people, bringing God back into certain institutions. Now when kids say the Pledge of Allegiance, they don't say under God anymore. And prayer has been taken out of schools. So those things are coming back. And that also isn't teaching religious intolerance, because any kid who doesn't subscribe to that has the right to opt out of participating. I know when I was growing up, I saw a lot of that with our Filipino students. They wouldn't participate in the pledge or the national anthem or anything like that. So it'll still be okay if that's not what you subscribe to. But for those who do, and since that is the foundational principles upon which America was founded on, Christianity, for it to be coming back, I think that we might see a lot less of the violence and the division that we've been used to. Because regardless of how people feel about Trump's rhetoric and it being ran on hate, his entire campaign was him talking about what he would do better versus Kamala is bad. Whereas Kamala's entire campaign was Trump is awful. and you have to vote for me. Trump is a racist, so you have to vote for me. He over here, whereas Trump would be like, Kamala's unqualified because she was border czar and she failed her duties at the border. You know, instead of Trump is bad. So it's like, I really think we're going to get back to logical arguments. Hopefully we get back to reasoning. And again, once people understand states' rights, I hope this will also result in more political activism and awareness, not just in the Black community, but with everybody. Once people realize they can petition their school board or their city council to pass a law or make amendments, and then everybody can vote on it, and it could possibly actually happen, I think we're going to see a lot of the changes that people want. They're actually going to start seeing them, because only Trump made y'all realize that y'all got to go to y'all governor for this. You got to go to your mayor for this. You got to go to your commissioners for this. And now people are going to realize, okay, well, the Fed said it's up to the state. So how do we get the state to listen to us? And that process alone will cause a lot of people. I think we're going to see better outcomes or better voter participation in our midterms. I think that the next presidential election will be extremely interesting, because now both sides understand that they have to earn your vote. You know, concerts and making people feel good is not enough, but also Donald Trump can't run again. So the next guy is going to be a brand new guy who's really going to have to get you to believe that he can do the job. Same thing with whoever the Democrats push up, is going to have to be somebody who can really make you believe that they can do the job. And both sides are going to have to really push policies that will benefit people. And it's like, we'll actually get back to American politics. It won't be the reality TV show that I think we've been living through for the past 12 years. And I say 12 because it started with Obama.
Powerful, powerful. JP.
I mean, there's so much we can go. It looks like we're wrapping this state on up. You know, we started off with some education, some women's rights. You touched on the immigrant issue. You know, you snuck in a little project 2025, which yeah, absolutely. You know, didn't get to identity politics, but you know, later time of day, maybe we go pause.
Yeah, bro.
It's cool. But for me, man, for the people, like, you know.
Interesting conversation with just a bunch of HBCU students. I thought they all had some great points. But there was one standout, and you heard her. Trump's not a racist. Trump just want to make America great again. Despite what you think, despite what you heard, you've been hoodwinked, you've been led astray. It's all over now. Trump's going to be in office. There's going to be some changes made, and it's all for the good. So you guys have a blessed day. Thanks for riding with me. I might be back from this call headed to McDonough. So until then, guys, peace out. Love.